سنة وثلاث اشهر هلا تخلص القصة.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. Two bomb explosions targeting a peace rally in Turkey's capital of Ankara kill at least 60 people and injures 126 others. Head of the PR division of the ISF, Joseph Msellim, says that freedom of expression is a righteous demand only if it is practiced under law. And according to police, a Palestinian attacker stabs two people in Jerusalem, adding to the recent escalation of violence. Good afternoon to all our viewers. We begin today with two bomb explosions targeting a peace rally in Turkey's capital of Ankara. It killed at least 58 people now. We're getting numbers still coming in as the incident unfolds. It injured about 126 others, according to Turkey's Interior Ministry. The explosions occurred minutes apart near Ankara's main train station as people were gathering for the rally, organized by the country's public sector workers, trade union, and other civil society groups. The rally aimed to call for an end to the renewed violence between Kurdish rebels and Turkish security forces. It was not clear if the attacks, which came weeks before Turkey's November 1st elections, were suicide bombings. Progressive Socialist Party leader Walid Jumblat is stating that although he consents the request of civil society activists, he finds that it is unacceptable to drag the country into chaos. He was quoted saying, "We have expressed our support for the demands and slogans raised by civil society activists. We even condemned ourselves, but that does not mean that we will not accept to stand idle and watch the country being dragged into chaos and systematic destruction of the economy, touristic as well as commercial institutions." Now, civil society activists gathered in downtown Beirut on Thursday protesting the government's dysfunction on an almost 3-month waste management crisis. The protests spiraled after the campaigners tried to remove the barricades near a Nahar building that were placed by the security forces to keep the protesters away from parliament and governmental offices. Commenting on the subject, the head of the Public Relations Division of the Internal Security Forces, Colonel Joseph Msellim, says that freedom of expression is a righteous demand, but only if it is practiced under law. He said, "We believe in freedom of expression, which is a constitutional right, but it should be expressed under the law, which means the protests should not be violent." Msellim said this in a press conference he held against the backdrop of Thursday's downtown demonstrators that turned violent and stretched until very late at night. Demonstrations must be first approved and announced to the related authorities, otherwise they are considered illegal, he stated, pointing out that none of the protests have been so far complying to that demand. Asked about the reason that compels security members to block certain areas and use water cannons as well as tear gas against the demonstrators, Msellim said that they prevented protesters from entering Nijmeh Square, which is a public property for all Lebanese, and for security reasons. Syrian rebels are battling ISIS in northern Aleppo province a day after the jihadist force advanced to the outskirts of the city of the same name. Islamist rebels, including the powerful Ahrar al-Sham group, were able overnight to recapture a village from ISIS. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said. The Britain-based Monitor said clashes were ongoing for control of a second village captured by ISIS on Friday. Now, the advance on Friday brought the group to within 20 kilometers of the front line between rebel forces and the army in Syria's second city of Aleppo, where government forces are stationed in the Sheikh Najjar industrial zone. It also threatened rebel access to a key leading to the Turkish border. Dozens of jihadists and rebel fighters are killed in Friday's clashes. The observatory had no immediate toll for the ISIS rebel night, but into the Saturday, it said the rebels recaptured Tel Susin and battled to retake Tel Krah. According to police, a Palestinian attacker stabbed two people in Jerusalem this morning. Police spokesman Miki Rosenfeld said the attack took place in the central part of the city and police forces killed the attacker. Now, this is the latest incident in a wave of Palestinian stabbing attacks against civilians and soldiers in Israel and in the West Bank over the past week. The attacks have been 2 and 4th. They started in Jerusalem over what Israel says are unfounded Palestinian rumors that Israel is expanding its presence at a sensitive holy site sacred to both Muslims and Jews. They have since spread to the rest of the country. Also earlier this morning, hundreds of Palestinians participated to the funeral of Ahmad Jamal Saleh. Now, Saleh was killed in overnight clashes with Israeli forces at Shafat in East Jerusalem. Coming up next, Salma Hayek says women in Hollywood are still not making the same salary as their male co-stars for the same work. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching the 16:20 o'clock news here on Future Television. Hundreds of protesters in the Victorian regional town of Bendigo clashed over a proposal to build a mosque in the city. Opponents of the mosque, many bussed in from other states, are organized by the far-right group United Patriots Front. They were confronted by a coalition of anti-racist and pro-multicultural groups. Police estimated that there were around 600 to 700 protesters in all, despite making 4 arrests, and they said the crowds were generally well behaved. Local MP Lisa Chester said it was a shame that the anti-mosque protesters had come to Bendigo. The last major protest in Bendigo on August 29th resulted in violent clashes between demonstrators from the far right and the left. The public must come together to figure out how to keep deadly mass shootings from happening, U.S. President Barack Obama says, as he emerges from a private meeting with relatives of the victims of last week's shootings in Oregon to declare that today was about families.
I just had a chance to talk to him. Obviously, in moments like these, words aren't going to bring their loved ones back. But the one thing that they shared is how much they appreciate the entire UCC community coming together, how much they appreciate all their neighbors, all their friends, and people all across the country who offered to help, sent their thoughts and their prayers. And what I just told the mayor is that if there's anything that we can do at the federal level to help the community heal from this loss, obviously we're going to be there. There are going to be, I think, moments as we go forward where we're going to have to come together and figure out how do we stop things like this from happening. And you know, I've got some very strong feelings about this because when you talk to these families, you're reminded that this could be happening to your child, or your mom, or your dad, or your relative, or your friend. And so, you know, we're going to have to come together as a country to see how we can prevent these issues from taking place. But today, it's about the families, their grief, and the love we feel for them. They surely do appreciate all the support that they've received.
Suffragette star Meryl Streep says though while women have come a long way since gaining the vote, the journey for equality is far from over. Speaking at London's first Women in the World event on Thursday, the Oscar-winning actress said that half of the people in law school in America are women, more than half in medical school, and that they're making incursions in business and they're coming up from the bottom. It's just the upper echelon which has not broken through, and women's issues are men's issues as well.
The marriage age was 12. When a girl got married, she lost her name and everything she owned, from her combs to her shoes, belonged to her husband. Any money that she brought to the marriage was his. Any children born of that union were also his. So she could leave him and run away, but she had no agency, she had no choice. If the 12-year-old, if he decided she didn't need to be educated, that child was not educated because it was he who paid for the education of his children. If she married and went off in a profitable marriage, his wife legally had nothing to say about it. This kind of describes many places in the world right now. We have a sex trafficking business that is $90 billion, second only to arms dealing, and it deals mostly in little girls and women. But half of the women in America who are half of the people in law school in America are women, more than half in medical school. We're making incursions in business. We're coming up from the bottom. It's just that upper echelon we haven't broken through. And women's issues are men's problems.
Yeah.
Salma Hayek is also another woman in Hollywood. She says that they're still trying to make the same salary as their male co-stars, but they don't. Female workers in California are getting new tools to challenge gender-based wage gaps under legislation that supporters say offers the strongest equal pay protection in the United States. The Fair Pay Act also protects workers from discrimination and retaliation if they ask questions about how much other people earn, though it doesn't require that employers provide that information. Workers also will gain the right to sue if they are paid less than someone with a different job title who does substantially similar work.
Every time a woman gets paid a lot of money, it's huge news. Nobody talks about how we don't get paid the same. But do you remember Demi, you know, when she did striptease? Oh my God. And of course it took a movie called Striptease for a woman to really get paid. The only industry where they get paid more, the only films where they get paid more, it's pornography. It's in the porno industry. This is true, and this is quite tragic. I think that we are in a different era now, where I am very optimistic that things are going to change. Only because I think the industry is beginning to realize what an economic workforce we are, because a lot of women that are working are moviegoers. They make the decision even what the family is going to go see. They're buying the tickets. I think women today are not, their main problem is not the prince coming to rescue them. So the romantic comedies as they were are not as popular anymore because we have evolved, but the industry has not evolved with us. The industry has neglected women and its evolution for many years. There's also not writers, not producers, not directors that have the freedom to tell our stories from our perspectives. The few times that they get hired, they get micromanaged and funneled into, again, the male point of view. So I think that because we need the audience to unite to the cause and say, no, I don't want to see that. I want something for me that talks about my problems, that inspires me, that has a voice that I understand from my soul.
The bill that was passed, I'm very curious in general, not just in Hollywood. I don't think Hollywood's the most important thing. There's a lot of other stuff happening in the world. You know what I mean? It's not just about what's happening in TV and film. Okay, so I'm intrigued because I personally am in TV and film, but you know, there are women in the workforce in all different capacities that are doing wonderful work that need to be compensated in a way that not only is in line with what their male counterparts are doing, or in general, I know we're talking about it in terms of a gender gap, but is gender really the issue, or should we all just be paid equally for doing a job? Like, that's just what it is. I know that we've had to call it a gender gap because that's where the distinguishing factor or line has been, but gender is also changing in this country.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a remainder of our headlines. 2 bomb explosions targeting a peace rally in Turkey's capital of Ankara kill at least 30 people and injures 126 others. The head of the PR division of the Internal Security Forces, Joseph Msellam, says the freedom of expression is a righteous demand only if it is practiced under law. And according to police, a Palestinian attacker stabs 2 people in Jerusalem, adding to the recent escalation of violence. Your Saturday headlines live on Future Television. I'm Yumna Nofa signing off. Have a good weekend.
سنة و3 أشهر بحالنا تخلص على الصار.